What's up, Internet? You're tuning to episode 170 of Nintendo Noise, Slip Screen Games' weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Peter Bessie, joined today by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Jack Ryan.
I'm a little nervous.
Oh boy, honestly, I'm not nervous, but my heart's fluttering. I'm so excited for this episode, my friend. For those of you who don't know, which I guess is probably all of you, I have talked about it on Patreon content in the past, but Jack is a very old friend of mine and was my co-host on the very first video game podcast that I ever did with me and Ken. So
DOG, baby.
Yeah, and this is the first time we have done a podcast together in probably 10 years or so, maybe?
Also the first time I've done a podcast, period, in about 10 years, so
I am...
This should be good.
I'm excited about it. I feel like this is, we're calling you out of retirement at the perfect time, right? Nintendo Switch 2 is right around the corner. It's a very exciting time to be covering Nintendo, and I'm super stoked to be doing it with you again, bud. So thanks for joining me.
I think last time we did this, I was screaming about the Wii U, so
I think that's right. I think that's
brighter
correct.
days since then.
And strangely enough, we're still playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So look at that.
Yeah, there you go.
Some things never change. So what I wanted to get into today is let's talk a little bit about the Nintendo Switch 2's software lineup, because Phil Spencer made some comments this week that had me thinking about what games have been confirmed and what games are heavily rumored, because a bunch of leaks happened while we were on our break for the holidays. We haven't had a chance to really dig into all this stuff yet. And yeah, I wanted an excuse to do it, and Phil gave me one. So he was over on the Gamertag Radio podcast, and this was their episode that published last Friday, so just a couple days ago now as of recording. And Phil Spencer was talking about Nintendo Switch 2, how he had spoken with Furukawa after the reveal, and that he was like very much looking forward to Xbox supporting the console. And this is specifically what he had to say. Nintendo, their innovation and what they mean in this industry, I just always applaud the moves that they make. They did a little flash video, and I know we'll get more detail over time. I'm really looking forward to supporting them with the games that we have, and I just think they're a really important part of the industry. And
Phil Spencer's always saying something nice to someone, isn't he?
He is. I think obviously there's a ton of things you can say about some of the decisions Xbox has made under his tenure. I know sometimes he gets a lot of flack, but I think he really does try to put the outstretched hand rather than the fist. He tries to play nice.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Nintendo, it seems like that's always kind of been the message. Hasn't always been what we've gotten. Like, the message has been stronger than, the actual, how
result.
That translates into software, but we'll see. With what we've heard about the Switch 2, that could be different this time around.
Yeah, and I do think that there's probably good reason to think that, right? And we're going to kind of talk about, I think, some of the logistical reasons and like the ways that the industry has changed, but then also some of the software and hardware kind of interaction side of things, and like why Switch 2 might be a little bit more poised for better third-party support. Because I think you think about the early days of Nintendo Switch, and like there was a lot of kind of like excitement around some of the third-party support. Like Skyrim was one of the, that was very heavily featured in the launch trailer.
I think it was more than excitement. Like, I feel like the early years of the Switch, the third-party support was there, and it was as promised. At the time, the ports were not like as watered down as we consider them now.
Yeah.
I don't know. You tell me. What was it, like 3-4 years maybe in the life cycle? I feel that's when things started to really like, you saw the big drop off, and that support just very quickly like snowballed out of existence.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I wonder if part of the problem was that like I think a lot of the early defining like big like AAA third party games anyway were like they were older games that were getting ported. It wasn't like
they were,
it was like LA Noire, right? Like was the Rockstar game that we got, not GTA 5, right? Like that never came to Nintendo Switch. Like Red Dead Redemption eventually came, right? But that, was just like last year or whatever. So like I think you're right that in the early days, I feel like you had like your Bethesdas and Rockstars and some of these other publishers that like you don't associate with Nintendo, like being willing to show support and roll the dice and make like a unique product for Nintendo Switch. And I think that's always the thing that ends up killing third-party support, is like you having to make this specific release for Nintendo rather than, you know, whatever, right? Like Doom Eternal's out and it's on Nintendo Switch as well as every other platform, right? Which, like, the examples of that are very few and far between, even in those first couple of years. And, you know, with what we have heard about, you know, DLSSR and all this stuff, it's like, it does seem like maybe there is the chance that we'll have a period where, like, what is new and current does come out on Switch too. But I think even if not, it is interesting to me to see like how much it seems like games have a longer tail these days, and how old games like something like Fallout 4, right, will like find itself back in the zeitgeist and whatever. And like maybe that's enough, is like having consistent third party support of like just great games you want to play anywhere and they're new to somebody is like enough of a strategy.
Right. Yeah, like the games that you buy on the Steam sale for like $20 that came out 3 years ago and are still selling like millions of copies to this day. Although, I mean, isn't that like when the Switch came out, you're describing the third-party support. Do you think we're going to see more of the same, which is, you know, games 4 to 5 years with a really long tail? Because I feel like we have more of that than ever.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe a little of both. I feel like there will, at least for some period of time, you'll have that effort to like keep up with what's current, if that's realistic, right? Like if what we've heard about the Nintendo Switch 2 like having a base level of power that's somewhat similar to the PS4 Pro, and it can take advantage of this upscaling technology to like close the gap between the PS4 Pro and say the PlayStation 5, right? Like, then I don't see why you wouldn't get some day and date releases. Like one of the games we're going to talk about in a minute when we get to the rumors here is Doom: The Dark Ages, right? And it's like, I don't know, I have every reason to believe that could be like a day and date situation if what we're hearing is true. But I think to the other part of your question, a lot of the other games on this list are older titles, right? That like never made it to Nintendo Switch.
I just mean, the leap in power from the Switch 1 to Switch 2, you know, just opens it up to what felt like 15% of the market. It can now run like 60% of what people want to buy. And so I'd have to imagine that'll be at least a very big part of it. Those big companies they're wanting to sell the games to Nintendo customers that they couldn't last generation.
Absolutely.
So and hopefully we'll see some of both. That would be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so, right? Because I think the comparison you made to Steam is like the most apt one in terms of like what I think the best result is, right? Is like just making as much of your catalog that is playable on Switch 2 playable on Switch 2, and like that it being that simple, right? And I think the thing that always ends up making third-party support kind of dry up on Nintendo is that it is rarely that simple, right? That there is enough of a gap. And I to your point, I wonder if, even if there is a power gap between the Switch 2 and the other, you know, current gen consoles, like, is it enough of a gap that, similar to the way in that, like, you know, there are multiple SKUs of the way a game plays on PC, right? Based on like what your rig is. Like, will Nintendo Switch 2 at the very least hit that kind of bar where it'll be able to, even if it's like, you know, oh, it's instead of 60 FPS, it's locked.
It doesn't feel like a wildly different thing. Exactly. Is what you're saying. Yeah, right. You're not getting the like definitively watered down. Yeah, like this is the game and this is the Switch version of the game.
Right, exactly.
Hopefully it'll feel more like, two different versions of the same experience.
And like it does seem that way, you know, based on what we know, right? Like what we seem to think the console's benchmarks are, what it seems to be capable of is like, you know, how many current, you know, quote unquote current gen games are there that are so powerful that like they couldn't run on a PlayStation 4 Pro, right? Or like, you know what I mean, right? Like it's like stuff like God of War Ragnarok or whatever, right? Like those were multi-plat releases.
Probably not getting that one if I had to guess.
Probably not that game.
Sorry.
But I mean, hey,
RIP to the God of War Ragnarok fans.
It seems like we might be getting a ton of Xbox games, which is pretty cool. So let's talk about that, because here's what we know so far, right? There are currently 8 games confirmed for Nintendo Switch 2. One of them is Mario Kart, right? Which we saw the new Mario Kart in the trailer. That's obviously great. We obviously have a few games that I think can speculate will be like cross-release style games, like something like Metroid Prime 4 or, you know, some of the other announced titles. But obviously we don't know yet. The 7 other games are all like indie games, that some of which I think you'll probably have heard of, and some of which I think are very much games that are hoping that they can recreate the magic. Yeah, exactly, right? Like they want to be the way indies were on Switch 1, right? Where it's like there's nothing to play and everything that comes out is on the top of the charts because people are hungry for software. And yeah, if you can ride that wave, you absolutely should. But yeah, so what we've got on that list, one of them is Yooka Replay, which is the remake of Yooka-Laylee from 2017, and it's Playtonic. It's the original developer. They're you know, just basically doing an HD remaster kind of situation, and you know, that's one that I could easily see being a launch release. There's no date on it yet, but that one would make sense day and date, I think.
Yeah.
So then we've also got Little Lands, which is a action adventure game that's like you know, cozy game kind of aesthetic, and it's made by a 2-person team, which is really cool. This is one that like it looks very similar to the like Link's Awakening remake and like the Zelda that came out last year. It's got that kind of like toy box, like doll aesthetic. Very cute art style. Yeah, I think this is one that like I could definitely see getting attention at release, because it looks like it's fairly robust, and yeah, there won't be a lot for it to compete with, so that's pretty cool. I think it's one that will probably catch a lot of eyes. So then we've got Bestiario, I don't know, but one of those probably. And it's a turn-based RPG. There's a social sim like kind of element to it. The trailer shows like a guy with like a guitar who is like he's called a hunter wizard, who's having a mystical mid-30s crisis, and he's got a very cool looking demon dog that's his sidekick.
I gotta write an email to these developers. If you're gonna make a launch game, make the title pronounceable. Make it unmistakable.
Yeah. I think how obtuse the title of your game is like has to be directly proportional to like how already popular
it's not the moment for Balatro. Like, give me something clean and simple.
Yeah, it's like you could get away with that if you're like, you know, like Metaphor Refantasio, right? From like Atlas is a goofy name, but it's like it's the new Atlas game. That you don't need to know what it's called, right? Like, give me one that I can pronounce.
Well, I appreciate the chutzpah. I wish them the best.
I do think it looks good. I think it's got a cute art style. I love a game with a pet dog. This is one I could definitely see myself spending some time with. The next up is Synth Beasts. This is from Red Hood Advance, and it's they describe it as an action RPG where you capture and tame beasts.
Yeah, have played it. Pokemon clone, right?
Yeah, except that also it's like it has like a kind of like dungeon crawler, like you're like running around in an overworld and like actively doing. So it's not like turn-based like Pokemon, obviously, and most Pokemon ripoffs. I shouldn't say ripoffs. You know what I mean? Like spiritual successors. That's what we call them. So yeah, it's like it kind of reminds me of like Binding of Isaac, because it's like you're a 2D character in a 3D like top-down overworld, and there's like a lot of like dodging attacks, and it's got like that kind of like moment to moment gameplay a little bit, but then obviously it looks like the way that you level up and unlock like new abilities and everything is from the capturing and training the monsters. So
well, that sounds awesome. I would have swore I played something called Synth Beasts. I might be mistaken because
I think you might be thinking of Cassette Beasts, which was a similar game.
I am absolutely thinking of Cassette Beasts. Thank you.
I also played that.
Yeah. It was good.
Pretty good game.
I was like, kind of a strange port for Switch 2 launch, but hey, go get it.
Yeah, right. It's like get that bag.
Right. For the clarification.
So then the next one is Horoscope. This is an action-adventure platformer that's got like some puzzle elements to it as well. It's got like a nice like kind of that like elevated like Sega Genesis style like pixel art, just with like more animation, more color. And it looks good. I think this is one that I could definitely see people getting into. It's 2-player as well, which is neat.
Right.
So yeah. Oh, and this is another single developer. This is Nick Oztok is single developer on this one, which is cool.
Nice. Yeah, I always love to see that. It's launch games. There's 9 games. A small minority are going to be good. But I do appreciate just do smaller games with 1 or 2 person development teams rather than we always get like the watered down, just awful shovelware ports. So
yeah, I'm excited to have.
Glad to hear. Yeah, there's at least a couple solid indies coming, and I'll group Yooka-Laylee in there as well.
Yeah, that's one I never played the original. Like it kind of passed me by, so I'm down to give it a shake. I'll be looking for new things to play. So then we got the next My Time game, My Time at Evershine, which is by Pathia Games is the name of the team. And they're known for doing the kind of like sandbox sim games that have like that kind of cozy vibe. They did My Time at Porsche, was I don't know if that was the last one, but that was the one that I think kind of put them on the map. So yeah, this is another one that will be right at home on Nintendo Switch 2. I think it is a good it fills a good gap, right? Like there aren't like a lot of these games are like action RPGs, a couple of them are turn-based RPGs. There's only like one other game that has that like kind of like cozy game life sim vibe, so definitely a genre that everybody's eager to play. So yeah, having you be kind of like the game that like stakes your flag in that genre at launch is pretty exciting. If it's a good game, that'll be a really big opportunity for them. Then we got Secret Forest, which is an open world MMORPG. It's coming from Zeklar Games. It's an Unreal Engine 5 joint, so it's it's got all that nice lighting, those nice open environments, all that good stuff.
Say MMORPG?
Yeah.
Okay.
On Nintendo Switch. Interesting.
Day one.
Yeah, right? I mean, seemingly. I guess maybe. Allegedly day one. It's announced for Switch 2.
Launch window.
Yeah, right. I think the kind of like thing that it most sticks out is that like there's a couple like interesting weird things about it. Like all the characters look like they're furries. There are like mini games it advertises, and it shows like you playing Guitar Hero basically.
Wonderful.
So that's cool. There's like a big mount system. They show you like being able to get on like a dragon and like fly around the map and stuff. That's cool.
Love mountain furries. Yep.
Yeah, furries, mountain furries. So yeah, this is.
Sounds great.
Mean, we'll see, right? So those are the games we know, right? These are all locked in, and like you said, I think it's a very so far like standard, predictable.
Yeah, sounds like a launch day lineup to me.
Right, Mario Kart, an indie game you've heard of, and then a bunch of indie games you probably haven't heard of. Sounds about right.
Right.
Couple notable titles in there, right? So then the 28 games that are rumored so far, right? This is from a leak that has been. It's making the rounds. It's come out from a couple different places, and it was came out at the end of December, beginning of January, and was alongside a lot of the Switch 2 leaks that ended up becoming confirmed when Nintendo actually revealed the console. So this is
Okay.
one of those, like, take it with a grain of salt, and the number of people, the people that have reported on it, it does seem like some or most of this is true. And also none of it is like crazy. So to me, it, seems like where there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing. But I'll let you decide. So first up is a new 3D Mario. I think that's surprising absolutely no one, right?
There's no way they'll do it, dude. There's no way they'll do it.
Another Mario? What? No.
They don't have the guts.
That's crazy. But it's like, right, we haven't gotten a new Mario game since 2017 when the Switch launched. We're long overdue. There's the new...
Yeah. I dare say there's one in the works somewhere in there.
Yeah. And, there is a rumor that came out back in November, actually. And this came from a Nintendo insider leaker, type guy named Zippo, who said that the game has some pretty impressive graphics. And he said that Nintendo has spared absolutely no expense with the game. And it sounds like he said that the title is quote absolutely dropping. And I don't know. It sounds. He said, there's another one. Visual fidelity is said to be a very high priority for the game as well, which is
he's my uncle, and that's all completely true.
He works in Nintendo. So there you go.
So
that's
excited.
That's the thing. This is one of those ones that, like, any person could be like, there's going to be a new 3D Mario, and you'd be like, whoa, like what a prediction. It's like, yeah, of course there will be. And I think this is one that, like, it makes a ton of sense that it would be a launch title. Why wouldn't you want to launch with a 3D Mario? Every Nintendo console tries to launch with a Mario title. It's the right time for one. Mario's kind of like, his stock is at a real high point right now, right?
I think Mario Kart 9 is our launch title because you only need one.
That's true.
And I think why rush out what can be a big second wave of interest in the system in 3 months, 4 months?
You think that's maybe I guess it depends on when the console comes out.
Yeah. I mean, Mario Kart 9 is not going to be the Breath of the Wild global, right, overtake. It's not going to be quite that level of pop, but
it'll sell more copies than games that get more attention, though, which is
it's going to sell a lot of it's going to sell a lot of consoles. It's going to get a lot of people aware of the Switch too that were not aware of it. So 3D Mario, I think launch window somewhere in there, probably within the first year, I would guess. I would be very surprised if they gave us a new Mario Kart and a new 3D Mario day one. That sounds a little generous,
like too much,
ambitious by Nintendo. Yeah,
I could see it as a launch window thing. I could see it as like
for sure.
Yeah, like if Switch comes out, say like June, right, July, August, and then maybe that's like the big Christmas game or something like that. Maybe that makes sense.
I think if it was coming at launch, we would have seen it in even the reveal teaser.
Yeah,
because I think that would have had more people talking than Mario Kart. Which, to be honest, if you're not a huge Mario Kart fan, like that could have been Mario Kart 8. You don't know. Yeah. Fans knew it was 9, but
yeah, I had to like tell
people when you're looking at a new 3D Mario.
That's the new Mario Kart.
You got to kind of tilt your head to know you're looking at a new Mario Kart.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so then the next one is a Final Fantasy IX remake. And this is one that I think is real, but I don't think the Nintendo angle of it is real, because this is a rumor that's been like making the rounds for a while that this is going to be the next classic Final Fantasy that gets the 7 remake treatment. Yeah, right. That's been a rumor for a long time. They did the re-release of it a couple years ago, which is kind of the same trajectory that 7 had, where they did the re-release of the original. There was the rumors of a remake. Then again, So I think that's probably true, right? 9 is probably the most popular of the that era aside from 7. It makes sense. But there's been recent rumors that it could be a Switch 2 exclusive, and that to me seems very unlikely because
yeah, that sounds crazy.
Just last year, right? Like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was a PlayStation exclusive, and Square expressed that they were disappointed by the sales, and they said that they're going to move away from like doing exclusive releases, and that multi-platform is, it's healthier for the game and everything. So I can't imagine that that's the case. I'm granted they have done console exclusives with Nintendo for like a year, and then they come out other places. They could do something like that, but
it doesn't feel like the game. And granted, I haven't played 7 Remake, so you tell me, but aren't those pretty like graphically
intense? Yeah,
intense games. Yeah, that's kind of the selling point, is they're toward the upper end of.
Yeah. And I guess
it's not just like we modernized it. It's like this is competing with some of the best looking games out there.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
it would be a bizarre choice for Switch 2. We'll see.
Seems that
Stranger things have happened.
And I guess there's the question there, right? Of like, is this rumor about the 3D Mario game having this super high fidelity, and like we were talking about like the DLSSR, and like, is Nintendo Switch 2 gonna have this like level of graphical capability that is hard for us to understand right now because we've not really experienced DLSSR proper, right? Like, there are things that take advantage of it. We've seen like how the technology can be applied, but this is like a custom chip made by NVIDIA to do this, right? And like we it's one of those things where like we knew, right, that the Nintendo Switch would do the whole like you could put it in a dock and it'll be instant. But I remember being like, but how instant is it really gonna be? Like, how is it really gonna work? And then it did, right? It just worked.
Mm-hmm.
And like, this could be one of those things where right now we have skepticism because it's new technology and we've not really seen it in action. And maybe that does close that gap, and it is capable of, very stunning, impressive graphics. And it is a thing you could show off as a launch title and be like proud of.
Here's why I'm upset. I didn't even get a chance to bring up my argument, which is Nintendo's track history with hardware, right? We have to kind of tread lightly and expect something tame and let ourselves be pleasantly surprised. I think you already hit like the best counterpoint there is, which is the Switch working flawlessly, like out of the box. It was what you saw in the trailer. So I think you're right. They could blow us out of the water with something that we're not expecting with it. This whole console generation, with Nintendo, they're doing what I want. They're giving us the same system, better specs, bigger screen, check. Anything above and beyond that would be amazing. But personally, I'm not expecting it. I think we'll see an upgraded Switch, and if we get amazing upscaling performance on top of that, that would blow me away. But yeah, I'd be surprised if we like really are wowed by it personally.
I agree with you. I think my one like kind of like tinfoil hat theory as to like maybe they'll surprise us when it comes to power, right? Is like, they've never done a 2 before, right? Like they've done sequel consoles in the past or whatever, like to some degree. Like the Game Boy Advance was very much like, it's more, right, of the same.
Well, I guess handhelds coincidentally are the only thing they have done sequels of.
But like,
I guess DS to 3DS is like,
but basically it's the same thing, right? Like it's I'm with you. So like, if you're going from a Switch to a Switch 2, right, and there is no new like major gimmick aside from, we talked about the rumor about the like C button, like the display. There's like a display button that is rumored that you'll be able to like kind of do some of the Wii U stuff where you could like switch screens and like maybe have an image on your Switch screen and on the TV and things like that. Which like, that's something. But like, maybe this is the generation where they do lean in more on like power, not to be like the cutting edge, but it's like, well, there's no new gimmick, right? So where did the R&D go if not this, this upscaling technology?
please know how desperately I want you to be right. It's just like we've both been following this stuff for 3 decades.
Yep.
And we know it comes down to what they can market as the selling point for the console. And that's not something they know how to market. I don't think it's something they want to try to figure out how to market. Like upscaling technology is, I don't expect Nintendo to ever use those words like out loud in front of a screen.
I've been wondering if they'll try to come
it would
up
be
with
awesome
like a cute name for it.
If that is a priority for them, that's incredible. I just when it comes to new consoles, they prioritize, that spin, that gimmick, that C button. I think that is more historically what they've prioritized. How can we show them the fun new thing it does? And upscaling is incredible, but it's not a fun thing to describe.
I think
so that'll be interesting.
The only way I see that working is if they have some kind of smart delivery solution like Xbox has, where like just playing a Switch game on Switch 2 like makes it run better. That's an easy way to sell upscaling. Is to be like,
you're absolutely right on that.
You can play Breath of the Wild at 60 FPS.
Best possible counterpoint you could have pulled.
But I mean,
agree.
But that's also again, that's a hard pull.
Feature. Yeah, but it's also something very showable.
Yeah.
So I think that's an amazing angle they could take with it. If that's again where their priorities are, we'll see.
We'll see. Next rumor is a Legend of Zelda remake / remaster. That is another like easy one, right? Of like, why wouldn't you do this, right? We just had a new Zelda, so like, it's probably too new for an actual new game, but you want to have a Zelda game on the new console. This could be when they finally give us, the Wind Waker remaster from Wii U that we never got on Switch for some reason. Why not, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
And there was a new egg leak that pointed to this existing. And some people have also brought up
any historical precedents with Newegg that you're aware of? Just out of curiosity.
Not to my knowledge, but retailer leaks have leaked games, and like not that I can remember Newegg, but it's happened with like Amazon and Target and stuff like that. Sometimes they're just placeholders, and that can be. But
Wind Waker is pretty specific, right? Like that's an odd one to pop up.
Right. Although I don't think the leak was for Wind Waker. I think it was just for a like Zelda game.
Okay.
So it like,
that's a lot looser.
That could easily be. I think Wind Waker makes a lot of sense, but I could easily see us do Ocarina or Majora's, and like it could just be a like remaster of the 3DS version with up-resed for modern consoles, and that could take advantage of that like C button with the dual screen and all that bullshit.
Yep.
So I think that one's probably, that's probably true. So the next up is Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. This is, I think, makes a ton of sense. Why wouldn't you, right?
So this is what? Not the remake of Snake Eater.
No, this is the remake of Snake Eater.
The new remake?
Yeah, the new one that I think it's actually called Metal Gear Solid Delta, right? As I think the full title, Delta Snake Eater. Okay. And that's the word on the street is there'll be a Switch 2 version. Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Makes sense. I think that's the kind of game that like you could easily have a Switch 2 version.
That game has existed on a weirdly high number of Nintendo consoles, so keep the tradition going.
Yeah, why not? And that's actually an interesting point is, that's like a fun, like you could do some kind of like, it was like a defining game on the GameCube, right? And it's like, it's back. Great.
Yeah. The 3DS version was great, amazingly.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
I'll die on that hill. It was a fantastic port.
So then there was another rumor about a Nintendo and Bandai Namco working on a new Smash Brothers game that would come out in 2026, and there were some rumors about like certain characters being featured, like Crash and Waluigi and stuff like that. So it's like, I don't know. This is one of those ones where it's like this.
There will never not be a Smash Bros. Rumor.
Right, exactly.
Every generation until a Smash Bros. Is out, there will always be rumors.
Yeah, and there's been so many of those ones where it's like, oh, like Ridley's coming to Smash. They've been saying that since Melee, and then it eventually, so it's like, sure, I don't know, maybe, but I kind of wonder if you don't maybe do give Ultimate the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe treatment and just do like a re-release with some new content and like let it ride.
I would be surprised if that's not the move. Yeah.
Right? I don't think they're making a new Smash game without Sakurai that comes out in 2026. That seems crazy to me.
Yeah. With what has to be less than the 75,000 characters that are in that game.
Right.
Like it's such a, celebration of Smash Bros. Why would you go back to the drawing board and spend a lot of money developing something not as robust?
I think you just wait, right? Like, because you're going to have to do that eventually, but like let this game exist longer, right? Like make more money on it before you pull that lever, I think.
Yeah. Melee HD remake is never going to happen, but that would be cool.
That would be a really great idea, honestly.
Like a proper remake,
Yeah, I think that would be a really good idea. Or like you could do a Smash collection even, right? Of like, it's a like, oh, you get 1 through 4 in like a bundle and it's their, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, there's exactly one Smash Bros. Game that hardcore Smash Bros. Players care about.
Yeah.
And sorry, guys, you're never going to get it, but I support the cause.
It would be nice.
Yeah.
So then the next one is Metroid Prime 4. We talked about this. It's like the rumor is that it'll be a cross-gen release. That makes sense, obviously, based on everything we know about everything. So then we've got Doom the Dark Ages. So this is one, I'll be interested to see how this plays out, because I think this is true, right? Like the last 2 Doom games both came to Nintendo Switch and like ran surprisingly well.
They were, masterclass in optimization.
Yeah.
And they always have been, that studio. It wasn't a surprise.
No, but it was like, it was one of those things of like, could a lot more games be on Switch if you just were more interested in doing it? Because this runs incredibly well for a game that's notably fast.
It's not fair to hold everyone else to that standard. They are absolute, like, literal wizards.
Yeah, really, really impressive work. For me,
was Doom Eternal was not a day one Switch?
No, I don't think it was. I think it came shortly after. Yeah. So could be similar. Could be day one. I could see. I think based on when the console comes out, I think it could satisfy both of those criteria, because it's like Dark Ages is supposed to come out on May 15th, and I don't think, Switch, we're getting the reveal in April. I don't think it's coming out in May. So the idea that the, everywhere else version will come out, and then like 6 months later when Nintendo Switch is out, maybe it's a launch title, that'd be great. I mean, having like a marquee first-person shooter day and date, obviously not something you usually get on a Nintendo console, so that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. I think Doom's a great example of a AAA game that, like, some people just want to own in handheld and will buy it twice because they want to own in handheld. So
yeah, totally.
Logistically, I have no idea what it would take to pull it off, but I think early Switch adopters a lot of them would be gladly picking up Doom if it's available shortly after launch.
I could see that being a game that people wait for too, and being like, I would rather play it there just because I want to have it in handheld. For sure. I want to chip away at it. The next up on the list is Astral Chain 2. So this would be, a sequel to the 2019 game. Obviously, this was like Platinum Games, was an exclusive, got a lot of attention. This makes sense, right? Like that game was well received. The idea that they would be working on a follow-up and that it would be ready now, 6 years later? That makes a ton of sense. There was a rumor that it had a reboot in development in 2023. So if that's the case, that makes me think that it's definitely not a launch title. Because 6 years in development would be the right time, but if it just got restarted like 2 years ago, depending on how significant that reboot, quote unquote, was, this could be many years away.
Yeah. I don't know much about the game in the first place, to be totally honest. So I will shrug, and whoever's stoked for it, I hope it comes in whatever form you're hoping for.
I am a huge Platinum Games hater, but I agree. I hope for the people that loved Astral Chain, of which there were many, I hope it is real and it is good.
Yeah. Very inoffensive stuff to me. Yeah. Not my jam personally, but
It is also
quality products.
It's a good game for the lineup too. You know?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so then the next one is that there's going to be a new Star Fox title. There was a rumor about a year ago that there was going to be a new Star Fox game in development, and that it would be released within the next 12 months. That's obviously now, but at the time that rumor came out, that would have been during the time in which the Nintendo Switch 2, I believe, was still planned for this previous year, right? They delayed it to 2025.
Yeah. Here's what's going to happen. You want to know what's going to happen, Pete?
I do.
I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you the future right now.
Yeah, predict it.
So I don't know when it's
Nostradamus.
I'd be surprised if it's within the first year of the Switch 2. But at some point, a new Star Fox is going to come out. Nintendo is going to learn absolutely nothing. Just nothing about why the last one didn't sell on Wii U with the crazy control scheme. And they are going to once again apply the same approach. That is going to be the game that tries to sell you on whatever the hell the C button does. It's going to not be fun to play at all. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. Just carpal tunnel out the wazoo, like unplayable. And Star Fox fans are once again going to be left in the dark for another decade. So you can tell me your thoughts. It doesn't matter. That's what's going to happen. Like, we're living in that timeline. Those are canon events.
I want you to be wrong so bad, but there's literally
buddy, I'd love
there's literally no evidence to suggest that this will be the one where they get it right.
Zero. Yeah, it's not happening.
If it had come out on Switch, I would have been like, sure, because that was on Switch, every game from any Dead franchise came out. It was great, right? But it's like on this, we don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't think Star Fox is. I don't think they got it in. I think that franchise is.
Do you think Star Fox is just not salvageable? Like, do you think it's not a thing that works in the modern era, or do you think they just don't have a clear enough
I think they have no idea. They know people love Star Fox 64, or they know their older audience does. And that's all they know. They don't know if that formula is profitable. In 2025, it's expensive to find that out. I get it. But at least let the fox die. If you're not going to give us proper Star Fox that honors the IP, don't let him be like your little gimmick guinea pig. One or the other.
Yeah, I would love for them to figure it out. I think literally the one thing that I would say gives me any level of hope that they could right the ship is that they, like, Metroid, like, languished in obscurity for so long, and then Dread was like such a like right place, right time, right release. They put it out as like the game to push the OLED Switch, broke all these records. It's like, I do think that they have been trying to actively kind of look for ways to elevate the franchises they have that have recognition, but that have never really been big sellers, right? Like, Metroid was never a big seller. Dread outsold, like, I think the entire franchise.
Like, relatively speaking, yes, Metroid has never been one of their big sellers. But I think compared to Star Fox, it's just like a different beast.
Yeah.
Like, Metroid still has some serious, power in its name in a way that Star Fox just doesn't. I don't know, man. I've seen so many D-tier Smash Bros. Characters get their own games. We got a Kid Icarus sequel.
That game was good.
Captain Toad got a game before Star Fox was done an ounce of justice. So,
yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath for a good one, but I
love your optimism for you. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
If we get a new Star Fox, it's going to be trash, and
I hope I can throw this clip in your face
and
when that happens. I hope so. I hope so. But you're probably right. Okay, so then next up is Pokemon Legends ZA. So this is an interesting one. We've had two reports about this. There was one that it was not going to be a Nintendo Switch 2 release. It would just be a Switch game. But then when there was that Game Freak database leak a while back, a couple of months ago, there were some files that suggested it would be a cross-gen release and that there would be 2 versions of the game that were like in development under different code names. So I don't know if
well within Game Freak's wheelhouse.
Yeah, it could easily be like a Legends Z and Legends A are 2 different games kind of thing.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
But I don't know. I could see this being either or. I think the idea that it's not cross-gen also makes sense.
Yeah, I'll just hope for the best for that game, because I'm so like polar split, because so innovative, so fun, so different, ran like dog water.
It did, yeah. But it was really fun. Like, I do think that was
the best
Pokemon game.
It was such a worthwhile game. Yeah, I just Game Freak is what it is.
Yeah, I am interested to see, because this one like has had a little bit more time to cook. So I hopefully that's something. I mean, like they obviously like it was just such an unforced error with like what an absolutely terrible release Scarlet and Violet were. You gotta hope that that's the come to Jesus moment of like, guys,
how many copies they sell though?
Take longer. I know. Yeah, I know. I mean, but I do think that there probably is some top-down pressure from Nintendo, because they had to issue an apology statement for the game.
Yeah,
and it's like
they do. They take that stuff seriously.
Quality is like supposed to be Nintendo's thing, and like for them to have like what is arguably their most popular franchise, put out a game that was like just like terrible, right?
Demanding refunds, right?
Yeah, right. Like and like where you couldn't even make an argument that wasn't legitimate, right? Is like, yeah, that's something that you gotta imagine that they're like, hey, like we get that Pokemon is a bigger machine than the games, but you need the games to be fucking functional, right? Like,
yeah.
And yeah, this to me is the like, I am always smoking copium that the next one will be the good one, and it's like, and it never happens.
I'm aware, buddy.
But yeah. Arceus, I think, was really good. That was a genuinely good.
In terms, that was the creative leap.
Yeah, the gameplay was excellent.
Now we need the technical leap.
Yes, and I think that's where we're at. And hopefully this is it. Hopefully the Switch 2 being so powerful, will make it that even if it is poorly fucking optimized,
makes it impossible for Game Freak to pump out something ugly.
Yeah, that's something, or that doesn't run. That like is just objectively bad software. Like hopefully that's the case. But Lord knows, right? Like it's like I would really love to see them like work with some sister studios. Like the way that like what's I can't think of their name right now. The Xenoblade studio. Oh, God. Look it up for me real quick. But the Xenoblade studio, like, does background work on, like, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, right? And it's like, I would love to see them collaborate with some studios that are better at making 3D environments and, like, optimizing those spaces to look really lived in and fleshed out, and like imagine a regular Pokemon game that looks like Pokemon Snap 2, right? Like that's the dream.
Monolith Soft, by the way.
Monolith Soft, thank you. Yeah, that I think is the best way forward, because I don't think that Game Freak is a studio that's like, to your point, right? Like there was the ability to have good, meaningful, creative changes. It's like they're just on such a treadmill. Like they have so little time to work on these games that it's like, yeah. of course they look like shit.
I think
of course they run
that's
like
the point of like proving it's just because they're not trying hard enough.
Yeah, no, I really don't think that's it. Right?
I don't think it's like a lack of ambition. I just don't think they're equipped to make modern video games.
No, and I think they need to go through like an upscaling, and they need to like hire more people and spend more money and spend more time, and like there are ways to do that and not print Pokemon cards and not have an anime. There are 1,000 Pokemon. Like you can rest on your laurels a little bit and upscale your technology. Hopefully this is the time, right? We'll see. It's a new console generation. They don't have the excuse of it being their first generation doing 3D games or home console. Like it's like there are no excuses left. Hopefully this is the time. I doubt it, but we'll see. That's the other rumor, is that Gen 2 is in development, or Gen 10, excuse me, is in development. That it's going to be cross-gen. It'll be on Switch and Switch 2. I think that also makes sense, right? Like the idea that they would not want to leave the 140 million players that could buy it on Switch 2 on the table, right? That's what they did with the Black and White 2, right? Like those were the first games that came out after the 3DS. It was X and Y were the first ones that finally jumped over. So I think that probably makes sense.
Yeah. I don't want to linger on it and be a doomer, but just feels like worst case with if that's the approach. Worst case is they develop it for Switch 2 and then we get this Switch port that runs horribly on Switch 1 and everyone who either can't get a unit because they're sold out or doesn't have the money to get one or is waiting for whatever reason is kind of left in the dark and with a sour taste in their mouth, but we'll see. Silly to speculate at this point, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things where like I think doomerism around Pokemon makes sense based on their track record, and there's always the chance that this is the time that it turns, you know? Like, I wouldn't have assumed that they were capable of making a game that I would argue is one of the best Pokemon games, and they did. So, fingers crossed. Sure would love it.
They made one of the best Pokemon game concepts.
Yeah, that's
I'll
fair.
give you that. Yeah. That's objectively true. That performance,
a lot of room.
We'll see. I will be, strongly interested in seeing the first entries we see from Game Freak on this new hardware.
Yeah, me too. Or maybe I'm really excited for the ones after that, because that'll really be the good one. That's what I tell myself. Yeah. So then there's a couple other games that are rumored ports, and I think they all make sense. I don't think there's anything on this list that's too crazy. We have 2 Assassin's Creed games. It's Assassin's Creed Mirage and Assassin's Creed Shadows. Shadows is, of course, the new one that's like due out. That's the one that's set in Japan that's been delayed a couple times. I don't remember which one Mirage is. Is that the short one that they put out?
Wrong person to ask.
Yeah, I've not paid attention to these games in a long time.
But I mean, they have the bigger like main entries, and then at least the last time I followed Assassin's Creed, they have kind of the smaller spin-off.
This was the smaller one that they had made that was like supposed to be, I think it was originally a DLC, and then they release it as its own thing, and it's like more like the classic formula rather than the like open world ones they've been doing the last, I think, 3 of them or whatever. So 2 Assassin's Creed titles. One of them that I would be relatively new at the time, which is, again, speaks to maybe there being that kind of AAA third-party support for a couple years at least. And then we have the first of 3 Microsoft games, or maybe it's 4, and I'll list them all at once because this, I think, speaks back to that Phil quote from earlier. Diablo 4, Halo, which the rumor is that it's the Master Chief Collection, which would make sense. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 and Starfield. Some pretty big swings there, I think.
Yeah, surprising list. Not the list I thought you were going to read off there.
Starfield and Halo are particularly... Oh, you know what? Fallout 4 is on that list too. I forgot that that's technically an Xbox.
Yeah. Well, Flight Simulator is... it's a graphically demanding piece of software.
Yeah. And again, maybe that speaks to the power that this thing is actually capable.
And processor heavy, and it's some heavy juice jogging.
I think Halo's interesting to me because it's one of a couple games on this list that are like pretty big multiplayer games, and obviously we talked about
Halo's the one.
Earlier.
Halo's the one that's no surprise. They've been selling that Master Chief Collection for I don't know how long it's been. 6 years, 5 years.
Longer, actually.
Maybe longer than that.
Yeah, because I think the Master Chief Collection actually came out last gen.
Yeah, but that seems like, the evergreen one that why don't we try and sneak this in while the console's new?
Yeah.
Get some sales from people.
Absolutely. Well,
impulse buy it to own it on handhelds.
Yeah, well, and like, if you're new console, you're looking for things to play, it's like, I mean, yeah, play Halo multiplayer. Halo multiplayer is really fun.
Yeah. Right? If it's fairly priced, like who's not picking up 4 Halo games or whatever it is for $30?
Why not? It looks like the original release was on Xbox One in 2014. So yeah, it's 11 years old now.
Yeah.
Which is like, if you can release that again on another platform and make a ton of money and get new people on the servers and everything, yeah, great. Why not? Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
So then there's a couple other ones that are pretty interesting on this list. There is EA Sports Football Club 25, which that's one that like they had to do like a special release for Switch when they did do a EA when it was FIFA, I think still. So yeah, with less features. This is one that it's like, is this maybe an example of like us getting that parity again of just being like, yeah, like this is out on everything and Nintendo is everything and it's not different, it's not lesser, it's not what it's just the same. Oh shit, I missed one on the list. Gears of War Ultimate Edition is on the list from Xbox as well. That's another one. It's another one. Makes sense. And again, pretty big, right? Like that's for a long time, kind of
another like cornerstone
marquee Xbox title. Yeah, very cool.
Makes sense.
Marvel Rivals is on the list, which is another one that's like, that is like the multiplayer game of the moment right now. So would make sense to want to kind of get in on that wave, but also like, like it's a fairly intensive game. So it is interesting to think like, does this maybe point to some better online infrastructure and, maybe an increased focus on online play? That would be cool.
Well, I think Halo's the bigger task because Marvel Rivals has so much money behind it to make it infinitely optimized to run on a toaster in the same way that Fortnite, right?
Sure, yeah. And that does run really well on Switch.
It's crazy that you can play competitive Fortnite. Maybe not competitive, but you can play online Fortnite on a Switch and it's totally viable.
Yeah.
If you're playing against other Switch players.
Definitely.
So I think that's another one. Like it's just got too much money to not. They want to make sure it runs well because they want people continuing to spend money on it. I think the Master Chief Collection, if that comes to fruition, that'll be a good multiplayer test to see what the experience is kind of in the early phase of this thing.
And like how they handle things like matchmaking and stuff like that. And it's are you like logging into your Xbox account like you did with Minecraft and like you're just using Xbox's matchmaking or a lot of interesting questions.
Love to see that. Yeah, that could be a whole another episode.
Yeah. And I mean, Phil has said he really wants to get Game Pass on other consoles. Like maybe there's something there too. We'll see. So then we have Metaphor ReFantazio. That's another one that makes a ton of sense, right? Like Atlas hasn't been doing the console exclusive stuff anymore. It was one of the big games of this year. There isn't a way to play it in handheld aside from Steam Deck right now. Obviously, Switch is going to have like a much bigger audience there. So yeah, I mean, that's another one that would be, I think, a big win if they can get that on or near launch. Probably everybody will be playing it. No Man's Sky. Another one that makes sense, right? One of the big ongoing games, but again,
might as well throw it on there.
Very online intensive. So that's another interesting one for infrastructure in terms of like, what's that experience like? So then I think we have our example of like the old AAA game representation here of Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, even as an older game, an exciting title for sure to be on that list. Just if you're someone who's interested in like video games, you should be curious how Red Dead Redemption 2 will perform on Switch 2.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's another one of those games that like is right at home on a handheld because it's like if you never played it, right, and now it's new to you, great. Then it's new to you and it's a defining Switch 2 experience. If you did play it and you want to replay it, a handheld is a great way to do that because you can chip away at it and it's huge. And there's that like, well, if you're playing like a big story mission, you'll play on the TV. But if you're like chipping away, upgrading gear or something, or like doing side quests, perfect for handheld, right? So
yeah,
one of those games right at home.
Remind me, the plot has escaped me. are we discussing just rumored games for the Switch 2? Is this all like launch window rumors? Because
So this is all games that have been rumored from leaks.
okay, just to exist at some point in the Switch 2's future.
Yeah, some of them have specific like suggested windows, but yeah, it's all based on
Okay.
smoke and
Yeah, I was about to say this is if we're still like in the opening launch months.
Just too many games, right?
Yeah,
No way.
It's too long. Okay, yeah. All good.
So then we got Tekken 8. That is another one that would be, I think, again, like really heavily, like online infrastructure is so important for a game like that. Like if there is
a good kind of baseline test, see where we're at.
Yeah, we'll know pretty well, right? Because latency in a fighting game is that just, it's not tenable. Breath of the Wild remaster is on the list. This is what I'm really interested to see what happens here. Like, is this a game that actually gets a port where it's like there's a new boxed copy of Breath of the Wild that costs $60 or whatever? Or are we going to have something similar to like PlayStation where you can pay for upgrades? Or is it an Xbox Smart Delivery thing where upgrades are just part of the, appeal of being like, because, they've talked about really wanting that continuity between the original Switch audience and this Switch audience. Is that maybe part of the way that you sweeten the deal of like you buy Switch 2 and every game that you already own plays better, and you can go back and play your old favorites and they're improved, that kind of
thing. So how, I guess if you insert like a Breath of the Wild cartridge, right, it would download the remaster patch. Or, like, how would it work for physical?
Yeah, I guess it would be that, right? Because that's how it works with, like, Horizon. Like, if you own Horizon 1 from PlayStation 4, you were able to put the disc in and then pay for the PS5 upgrade, which was, like, $10.
Didn't they, like, backpedal on that, though? It was, like, originally just for digital copies, but then, like, people complained. Does that ring a bell to you?
It's been a while. I don't remember, but that might be true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, I'm really curious how they handle it. Because last generation... Obviously, I was one of like the 6 people on Earth who owned a Wii U and just watched game after game come out that I already owned and be asked to pay $60 to replay every single one on the Switch. So there's precedent for that, but
yeah,
I would have to hope like Nintendo knows the success of this thing is going to ride on the Switch being one, life cycle. With a sequel and hardware, but not a complete reboot in the software you own and all that.
Yeah, because like if you're gonna
if they're remastering games, like you can't resell it at $60 or $70 to people that already own Breath of the Wild. They have to know that's crazy.
Yeah, I think especially when you're like part of your announcement is like all your old games it's backwards compatible. And it's like, okay, so but then you know what I mean? Like it's like I think with the Wii U example, it made more sense because it's like the games didn't sell on Wii U. So it's like they're trying to make the money back, right? Whereas ideally here, I own this game already. I own Breath of the Wild. I was a Switch owner. Of course I own Breath of the Wild, right? And if I think
they're going to do it right, even if it's a $10, $15 upgrade, I'm fine with that, I think.
I think that's palatable.
As long as the quality reflects in, the uptick in performance you're getting.
Yeah.
So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I think they're going to do it right, but because it's Nintendo, like there is in the very, very back of my mind, the little nugget that says, what if they handle this as poorly as possible? Hopefully they don't.
It could happen. There was a rumor I wanted to just drop real quick. This one came from Mike Odyssey, who's an independent games journalist. He works on Indie Mania. And he works on the Nintopics podcast. And he said, I usually don't share information, and I'm not a leaker, but I recently heard that Nintendo is diligently working on multiple patches for several games, not all of them. These patches will be showcased in the upcoming Switch 2 trailer. My understanding is that we won't be upsold on playing Breath of the Wild or Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom in 4K resolution on the Switch 2, which is fantastic news. Additionally, the trailer is complete, and the highlights include screen size, new Joy-Cons, third-party support, and a new dock. The screen size will be relevant to the Let's Play Together feature in table mode. I'm not a leaker, LOL. So obviously a lot
sounds
of those...
like a leaker, dude.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those things were true, right? Like a lot of those things were in the reveal trailer, but obviously we didn't see mention of patches or something like that. I think to the point that you made earlier, that's something that is not super simple to communicate. So I would imagine
it's not a visual sell. Yeah.
No, you don't include that in a launch trailer. I don't think. I think the fact that we didn't see that doesn't mean that it's not true, but we'll see.
Okay. Well, I mean, what you just said sounds marvelous. So
I hope so. Right?
If we get anything, resembling that, then that would be the great place to start with Switch 2.
Yeah, and I'm with you where, like, I think they can get away with charging us a cost, like a $10 upgrade fee or something like that. But yeah, I really hope that they don't try to sell us full price.
Or like it's free as long as your Nintendo Switch Online subscription's active. I can see them doing that.
Sure, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure they'll find some way to do it in a reasonable way that doesn't make people angry.
Agreed. Then the last one on the list is Visions of Mana. This is coming out later this year. It's just one that, like, yeah, sure, that makes sense. It's not a crazy suggestion. And then I think there's one more thing I did want to call out, which it's not a rumor or like new information per se, but we also have the knowledge that Call of Duty, right, should be coming to Nintendo Switch day and date, theoretically, right, based on the acquisition agreement that Microsoft made when they acquired Activision Blizzard. Like, part of that was them committing to releasing these games on Nintendo and PlayStation hardware moving forward. So that's another one that, like, seemingly maybe the next Call of Duty is on Switch 2 later this fall at launch, which would be unprecedented. That would be pretty crazy.
Yeah. When I think Call of Duty and Nintendo, like, I think of like the absolutely butchered Wii ports, and I think that's the series to prove, like, if this is going to be a modern handheld that can compete with the rest of the ecosystem in a way that Nintendo traditionally has not, I think Call of Duty is a good litmus test.
Yeah, and I think it's very exciting to see stuff like that on this list. Stuff like that, like Tekken, like Halo, where it's like...
Yeah, totally agree. Games I'm not interested in, but just as a fan of the industry and wanting video games to improve as much as possible and hardware to be as good as it can be, like, that's really interesting stuff to see how those ports end up performing.
Yeah, and it is one of those things that's like you really you hope, right? Because it's like it is so exciting to think about what does a generation of a Nintendo console look like, where you have the kind of like fun, innovative stuff that we think of with Nintendo, but then also like,
but it's not in a silo anymore.
Yes, yeah, and that, like, you know, many gamers out there that are like Nintendo players first or only, right? Like that they only own a Switch, and it's like they miss out on games like Doom or Marvel Rivals or what have you, right? And like the idea that,
or they own a console and they live two different segmented video game lives.
Yeah.
Sounds like the promise is this could be one device where all this happens, and that's an exciting thought.
Yeah,
coming from Nintendo specifically, who, you know, have seemed so averse to this kind of stuff in the past.
It's definitely a very exciting time right now, because what we know, I'm sure, is only part of the story, right? And yeah,
well, the Star Fox stuff I told you, that's true.
You nailed that one. You got that.
That's canon.
That's canon. But I think, you know, when you think about the time between the Switch's initial reveal and all of the speculation we did about how things would actually work and how these things would play out, by and large, I feel like it exceeded my expectations more than it didn't, right? And that was coming off of a generation where they had something to prove. And now they do, but in a different way. It's like they have to prove that they can repeat the success, not that they still have the ability to succeed, which I think is a very interesting position for them, because that's not usually when they
another big video game company who makes me worry when they don't have something to prove, you know?
Right. I mean, like, PlayStation,
there's not a more surefire bet in the industry than Nintendo facing bankruptcy. You know, it's about to be a banger.
Right. And it's like so crazy, because it's like there's that we know now that's like they could not release a game and eat shit for like 10 years and they would not have to fire anybody, and it would like, they have so much money.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, but it's like out of our last example before this was following the success of the Wii.
Right.
Which similarly, like the Switch, found its way into so many households that like would not have a console like that if not for Nintendo's approach to it. And we know what followed that. So
and
it'll be very interesting to see. You have to think they learned.
Yeah, because like it seems so obvious that they're afraid that that's going to happen again. So I'm like, good, be afraid. I want you to
just the fact that it's called the Switch 2, right, is already like a tremendous display of what they learned.
Totally. Yeah, that's a move that I don't think you would have predicted previous Nintendo to make.
Yeah, I mean, I remember texting you like they're going to call this thing the new Super Luigi Switch U experience, whatever nonsense. Like just that they got the assignment and it's called the Switch 2 is already a great sign.
Really, truly. Yeah. And it does make you wonder, because there wasn't the time and effort put into a new gimmick, like, are we going to see us be impressed by the hardware? Are we going to be really happy with the quality of life changes with the online functionality, like maybe updating the eShop, some of those kinds of things? Like, I am excited to see a generation where, not to see them like necessarily rest on their laurels, but more to be like, how do we build on the experience that we cultivated with Nintendo Switch rather than like, we're throwing it all out. It's a brand new roadmap, which is great, but also you nailed it. And now it's like, how do you keep that party rolling? And I think that is a more interesting question from a software perspective than a hardware perspective. And I'm excited about that as someone who I like Nintendo's gimmicks to an extent, but I often think that like what I liked about the Switch 2 was that the gimmick was not like waggle or a stylus or whatever. It was like the gimmick is your console has this functionality that can live with you everywhere. Like that was a revolutionary quote unquote gimmick, right? And I want to see them do that. Is like, okay, what are any identifiable flaws or problems with Nintendo Switch, and how do we address those things instead, right? And like be better on services, be better on, all the things that our competitors, blow us out of the water.
Yeah, it's again another episode, but that's heading into this thing and heading into this direct in early April. That's where my mind is at. Even day one with the Switch, when I said wow for the first time, it was because I was playing Breath of the Wild. It had nothing to do with the hardware. It had certainly nothing to do with the absolute bare bones UI of that thing, which I think to this day includes a friends list that you cannot message people on. I don't know why it exists.
Yeah.
Like you can technically, I think, invite people to games through it, but it's a convoluted mess. I was unimpressed on day one. I thought, surely, this just isn't finished and we'll see the full UI in a few months. Never came.
Nope.
Never even
touched it.
Never expanded upon in even the slightest of ways.
No themes, nothing.
So, yeah, that's a long way of saying the UI is kind of what my eyes are on heading into this thing, because I think that plays directly into how is this thing going to compete as a modern device.
Yeah, I agree.
Hard to have that conversation without mentioning how utterly behind the UI of the Switch 1 felt.
Yeah.
When it came to social features and those things that you expect in a modern gaming device.
Yeah, and I mean, even stuff that I think we that we had on 3DS, like actually having themes and things like there were like little things like folders and stuff like that. Like we never got those that functionality.
It was so strange. Yeah, things that we already had, we had seen from Nintendo just taken away and never replaced or mentioned, or like it was just odd.
And I am with you that I think this is a great time to focus in on some of that stuff and make an effort to kind of realize some of those gaps this time around. So yeah, we'll see.
Because I mean, have as many MMO RPGs and Halo Master Chief collections as you want, right? But if the friends list is still a glorified poster that's not interactive,
I really hope we move away from friend codes. I really do. I don't think we will. I really hope so. That is a huge wish list for me. That's a future episode, is to make a, like, let's do like a proper wish list. And it's like, what, you know, what are the things we would love to see them get right that they probably won't?
We'll bring in a design executive from New York. It'll be a big deal. It'll be great. Perfect. Rework the whole thing.
So, folks, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Nintendo Noise. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on this list. Are there any games that you think are missing, like games that you think we might see come to Nintendo Switch 2 that we know are due out this year or beyond? Any of these games that you think are definitely not a real rumor, right? That, like, you don't think we're going to see end up coming to the console. I'm interested in hearing what you guys think and which of these games you'd be looking to pick up on day one if they came to Nintendo Switch 2. So if you guys want to write in with your thoughts on that or anything else for next week's show, remember, you can do all that and much more by heading over to flipscreen.games. That's where you can find all the ways to get in touch with the show. However you choose to get involved, however you choose to show your support, that's the place to go to get all the stuff that we do here at Flipscreen Games. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Nintendo Noise. For the crew, I've been Pete, he's been Jack. We'll see you next week.